My stepmother didn't even look up from her mug when she said it. The spoon clinked against the ceramic once, twice, an impatient rhythm, and she kept stirring long after the sugar must have dissolved. The kitchen light was dim, that sickly yellow bulb she refused to replace because good lighting makes people lazy. Morning cold pressed through the cracked window, carrying the faint smell of wet leaves from the yard I had mowed the night before. "I need $800 for rent," she said finally, her voice flat, almost bored. "Starting next month." She said it like she was offering me a choice. She wasn't. "My name is Emily Ward. I'm 30 years old, and the day my stepmother demanded I pay rent, inside the home my grandparents left me, was the day everything snapped into place more cleanly than I expected. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts. It means more than you know." I stared at her. Not because I didn't understand, but because I understood too well. He wanted control. He always had. My father sat at the other end of the table, eyes glued to his phone, pretending not to hear. His silence was its own language. He only spoke when there was glory in it. Responsibility, confrontation, fairness. Those were things he delegated. Her 2 kids, Caleb and Rowan, 18 and 20, stumbled in a minute later, leaving muddy footprints across the floor as if marking territory. Caleb reached straight for the fridge. Rowan pulled out a chair, turned it around, and straddled it like he owned the place. Neither paid rent. Neither worked. Neither had plans to. But somehow I was the financial problem in the house my grandparents had put in my name years earlier. My stepmother folded her arms. "Well," she pressed, "rent isn't optional." The audacity would have been funny if it weren't so familiar. A memory resurfaced, the year after my mother died when I was 12. My stepmother had moved in fast, too fast, filling drawers before she knew how to pronounce my name. She'd rearranged the silverware, the furniture, the photographs. She even repainted the hallway without asking, covering my mother's favorite rose-patterned wallpaper with dull beige. She had always believed she was owed whatever space she occupied. My grandparents must have sensed that. Before they passed, they met with a lawyer quietly, so quietly that even my father never knew the full details. They transferred the deed of their home to me. They said they wanted to protect what mattered. I had been 19 then, too young to understand what they were protecting me from, but old enough to carry their decision like a compass. Now I understood it perfectly. I took a deep breath. "So let me get this straight," I said. "I'm supposed to pay rent in my own house?" Caleb laughed through a mouthful of cereal. Rowan smirked. My father's gaze remained fixed on his screen. My stepmother's eyes narrowed, 2 thin slits of irritation. "Your father and I manage this household," she said. "You live here. You contribute. That's how families work." Families. The word felt cheap coming from her. I pushed my chair back slowly. The legs scraped against the tile, cutting through the room with a harsh, metallic sound. She flinched just a little. Not because she was afraid of me. No, but because she was afraid of losing control of the narrative. "I'm not paying rent," I said softly. "You don't get to decide that," she snapped. I almost laughed. Almost. But the anger wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It came as a quiet, sinking warmth in my chest. The kind that arrives when truth finally aligns itself into something heavy and solid. I remember my grandmother's perfume, vanilla and old letters, filling the house the day she handed me the envelope with the deed inside. She held my wrist gently, almost apologetically, and whispered, "Emily, someday you'll see why this is necessary." That whisper returned to me now, steadying me from the inside. I stood up. My father looked at me then, barely, briefly. His eyes flickered with something like guilt before retreating into that familiar, comfortable indifference. "You're being ungrateful," my stepmother hissed. "Ungrateful. For the home my grandparents built. For the walls I grew up inside. For the rooms where my childhood drifted in and out like sunlight through lace curtains. Ungrateful." I walked out of the kitchen without another word. I could feel their eyes burning into my back. Caleb muttered something under his breath. Rowan laughed again. The sink dripped. The refrigerator hummed. The house, the real witness to everything, seemed to exhale with me. Upstairs, the hallway smelled faintly of wood polish and old memories. I paused outside my grandparents' old bedroom. The doorknob was cold beneath my palm. Dust floated like tiny ghosts in the morning light. I opened the door. Their room hadn't changed much. My stepmother avoided it. She said it felt too depressing. I knew the truth. It wasn't hers, and that irritated her in ways she couldn't articulate. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping the same way it used to when my grandmother sat beside me to braid my hair or read me a poem she had memorized decades earlier. A soft ache formed behind my ribs, not grief but something older, quieter. Something like loyalty. I pulled out the small wooden box she had left me. Inside were the letters, the receipts, the photocopies of the deed, the whole trail of decisions meant to shield me from exactly what was happening downstairs. I traced my fingers over her handwriting. I felt her presence in the stillness. There was only one conclusion. This house was mine. And they needed to go. Before making any decision though, I needed clarity, not anger. I needed to understand just how deep their entitlement ran. When I went downstairs again, the kitchen was louder. My stepmother was on the phone with someone talking about financial pressure and dead weight. Caleb was playing a video loudly. Rowan had left a wet towel on the floor. My father slipped on a jacket as if preparing to escape the atmosphere he helped create. I sat at the table. My stepmother hung up and glared at me. "So," she demanded, "did you decide to be responsible, or should I draw up a rental agreement?" I smiled. A small, calm, deeply unsettling smile. "You do that," I said. "Put it in writing." Her eyes flickered with triumph. My father exhaled, relieved. Caleb and Rowan fist-bumped like they had won something. None of them knew that written agreements cut both ways. None of them remembered whose name sat on the deed. None of them imagined that a single piece of paper could undo everything they'd built on top of my silence. But I knew. I stood up. "Oh," I added lightly, "and while we're putting things in writing, we should all review the ownership documents together." The room froze. The air thickened. My stepmother's face drained of color. She hadn't expected pushback. She certainly hadn't expected documentation. For the first time in years, I felt the house tilt back toward me, slowly, surely, inevitably. This was only the beginning. My stepmother's expression didn't crumble all at once. It changed the way weather does, slowly, subtly, until you realize the light in the room has shifted and you're standing inside a different storm. Her hands froze around the mug. Caleb muted the TV. Rowan finally looked like he understood something was wrong. My father cleared his throat. A useless gesture. A habit, not a stance. "What do you mean, review the ownership documents?" he asked, voice carefully neutral. I kept my tone soft, too soft, which made it worse for them. "I mean," I said, "we should all take a look at whose name is on this house." My stepmother blinked twice. "Your father's, obviously." "No," I said. "Not his." A long silence settled over the kitchen, heavy, grainy, almost tactile. The kind that sits between people when a truth has been hiding too long. Caleb looked toward his mother, confused. "Mom? What is she talking about?" She swallowed hard, jaw tightening. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. My father's face shifted next. First confusion, then a flicker of memory, then something darker. He whispered, "Your grandparents, they..." "Yes," I said quietly. "They left the house to me. Fully. Legally. Before you ever remarried." My stepmother's mug slipped from her fingers and clattered against the counter. Coffee splashed across her sleeve, but she didn't react to the burn. He just stared, hollow and stunned. "You're lying," she breathed. I shook my head. "No. I've been paying taxes, maintenance, insurance. Everything. I didn't say anything because it never mattered. Until you decided to charge me rent inside my own home." I remember a drifting moment, sitting beside my grandfather on the porch as he sanded a piece of cedar wood. His hands smelled like sawdust and peppermint. Without looking up, he had said, "Emily, the people who love you don't need leverage. They only need presence." I never realized how prophetic that was until now. My stepmother took a shaky breath. Well, that doesn't change anything. We've built our lives here. This is our home." "No," I said softly. "It isn't." Rowan stood abruptly. "You can't kick us out." Caleb chimed in, voice cracking. "We've lived here for 10 years. And I've let you," I replied. "But the moment you tried to turn me into your tenant, you stopped being family and started being occupants." The word rattled them. Occupants. Not children of the house. Not heirs. Not stakeholders. Just people living in a place they assumed they controlled. My father stepped forward finally, the smallest attempt at authority. Emily, let's talk privately. I shook my head. There's nothing to discuss privately. This affects everyone in this room. My stepmother pointed a trembling finger at me. You're doing this to punish me. I'm doing this, I said calmly, to reclaim what was mine long before you arrived. My grandparents wanted me protected. They saw something I didn't see yet. My voice didn't rise. The power wasn't in volume, it was in clarity. I pulled the folded deed from my bag and placed it on the table. The names were unmistakable. Mine alone. My father stared at it, shoulders slumping the way they had years ago when he lost a job he'd pretended wasn't slipping away. You should have told me, he said quietly. He didn't say it with anger, only the faintest regret. You never asked, I replied. My stepmother's face hardened again. Astonishing how quickly pride resurrects itself. You can't evict your own family, she snapped. You demanded rent, I reminded her. You made this a transaction. And transactions have consequences. Her breath hitched. This is cruel. No, I said. Cruelty is demanding rent from someone who owns the home. For the first time Caleb and Rowan looked at her, not me, with accusation. Mom, Caleb whispered, did you know? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I stood up. I'm giving you all 30 days. The room erupted. You can't do this. You're heartless. Where will we go? I thought you were family. Their voices crashed into each other, a loud, desperate storm. But beneath the noise, I felt something gentle rising in me, like an exhale long overdue. My father didn't shout. He just sat down slowly, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I looked at him not with anger but with a sadness that settled deep. You always taught me to stand on my own, I said softly. I'm doing that. He didn't look up. But he nodded, barely, deeply. My stepmother stormed toward the hallway. You'll regret this. You're going to regret this more than anything. Her footsteps thundered up the stairs. Caleb sank back in his chair. Rowan held his head in his hands. It wasn't triumph I felt. It wasn't revenge. It was something quieter, ache-tinted but clean. Relief. I walked outside. Cold air bit at my cheeks. The yard smelled faintly of winter pine and damp soil. The house behind me, my house, creaked softly as if adjusting itself, returning to its rightful posture. I called Daniel, my cousin, the only supportive person in my family. He laughed gently when I told him. Took you long enough, he said. Your grandparents would be proud. A warmth spread through me, threading itself into my ribs. I hope so, I whispered. The next weeks passed in a strange mixture of chaos and clarity. My stepmother slammed doors, muttered curses, made dramatic exits. Her sons sulked, avoided me, then approached me separately with half-formed apologies designed to secure their comfort, not accountability. My father handled logistics quietly, respectfully. We didn't fix our relationship, but we softened something in it. Like two people meeting in the middle of a long, barren field, unsure of the path but willing to stop walking in opposite directions. When moving day finally came, the house felt lighter. Empty hallways echoed differently. Windows breathed again. The floors, once drowned in noise, hummed with stillness. My stepmother gave me one final look. Sharp, wounded, incredulous. You'll end up alone, she said. I smiled gently, not mocking, just honest. Being alone isn't the same as being used. She didn't reply. They left. I stood in the doorway long after their car disappeared. Wind rustled through the trees. Light filtered through the blinds, soft and forgiving. I walked through every room slowly, touching walls, opening windows, letting the house inhale new air. It felt like rediscovering a childhood melody I didn't know I still remembered. In the quiet, I whispered, if you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe. The house settled around me, mine again in every way. Then I ended the day the only way that felt true. Curled up on my grandparents' old quilt, letting gratitude wash through me in steady, uncomplicated waves. Sometimes home returns quietly.